Today, we are going to dive into a truly groundbreaking idea, one that won a Nobel Prize, and it might just change how you see your own mind forever. See, it turns out there are two, let's call them characters, running the show inside your head. And once you get to know them, it's going to change how you think about, well, everything. Okay, quick question. What's 17 times 24? No, hold on. Don't actually try to solve it. Just feel what happens when I ask you that. You know it's a math problem. You know, deep down, you could figure it out. But actually doing it, that takes work. Real, deliberate mental effort. You can almost feel your brain kicking into a higher gear. That feeling, that's one of the characters in your mind hard at work. That's your slow thinking. All right, now try this. Picture an angry woman. A totally different experience, right? You didn't have to do anything. The image just popped into your head, you instantly knew she was angry, and you probably have a pretty good guess about what she might say or do next. That whole judgment just happened. It was effortless. That's your fast thinking. So these two totally different ways of thinking, the hard work of the math problem and that instant flash of insight about the angry woman, that's the work of what the psychologist Daniel Kahneman calls System 1 and System 2. These are the two characters running your mind. System 1 is that fast, intuitive, gut reaction part of you, and System 2 is your slow, careful, deliberate side. Okay, so let's break this down. System 1 is really the star of the show. It's your gut. It's working automatically, all the time, with pretty much zero effort. It's what you're using to get through most of your day. Now, System 2, that's more like the supporting actor. It's your conscious self, the part of you that makes choices and decides what to really focus on. It's super powerful, but here's the catch. It is lazy. And it gets tired out really easily. Most of the time, System 1 is just feeding suggestions to System 2, and System 2 just nods and says, yeah, that sounds good. So, System 1 sounds like the hero, right? It helps us navigate the world without getting bogged down. But like any good hero, it has a tragic flaw. To be so incredibly fast, it has to take shortcuts. It jumps to conclusions and relies on simple rules of thumb. And this leads to very predictable, systematic errors in our judgment. We call these cognitive biases. I bet you've seen this before. Take a look. Your gut, your System 1, is absolutely screaming that the bottom line is longer. It's not even a question. But if you were to pull out a ruler, you'd find they're exactly the same length. And here's the wildest part. Even after you know they're the same, you can't stop yourself from seeing the bottom one is longer. And this, right here, is the whole point. This visual illusion is the perfect metaphor for how our minds work. System 1 gets fooled, and you can't just tell it to stop. Well, it turns out there are illusions of thought, cognitive illusions, that work the exact same way. Our intuition makes these consistent mistakes, and even when we're aware of them, it's incredibly hard to shake that feeling that our gut is right. The halo effect is a perfect example of this. Let's say you really like a politician's stance on one particular issue. Well, your System 1 will quickly make you believe you also like their voice, their haircut, everything about them. It just leaps to a conclusion to build a simple, coherent story, even if there's almost no evidence for it. Our fast-thinking mind just loves a good story way more than it loves the messy truth. So, you've got to be asking, if our fast-thinking System 1 is so prone to making these mistakes, why doesn't our slow-thinking analytical System 2 just, step in and fix them? Why does this lazy boss let the impulsive hero mess up so often? Well, the answer is that System 2 is a massive energy hog. It takes real effort to use it, so it avoids work whenever it possibly can. It much prefers that feeling of what's called cognitive ease that System 1 provides. When an idea feels simple, familiar, and easy to process, System 2 just accepts it, no questions asked. It's only when things get difficult, when we hit some cognitive strain, that the lazy boss finally gets off the couch to do some real work. And believe it or not, it gets even worse. System 2's ability to do hard work isn't just limited by its laziness, it's actually a finite resource. Think of it like a muscle. If you use it a lot, it gets tired. This is called ego depletion. When you force yourself to do something difficult, you have less mental energy and self-control left over for the very next challenge that comes along. Just look at this. It's a startling real-world example from a study on Israeli judges making parole decisions. The percentage of times they approve parole spikes to around 65% right after they've had a food break. But then it steadily drops and drops to almost zero right before their next break. What does this mean? It means tired, hungry judges fall back on the easiest, default decision, just say no. Their depleted System 2 simply doesn't have the energy to carefully analyze the case. So what we have here is this deeply flawed partnership, a fast, intuitive hero that makes predictable mistakes and a slow, powerful boss who is often just too lazy or too tired to catch them. Let's see how this messy dynamic plays out in the real world. Kahneman tells this fantastic story about teaching flight instructors in the Israeli Air Force. He was explaining that psychologically, rewards for good performance work much better than punishment for bad performance. But a seasoned instructor stood up and said basically, no way. He shared this observation from his own experience. And you know what? His observation was 100% correct, but his conclusion was completely wrong. The real reason for what the instructor saw is a quirky statistical principle called regression to the mean. Think about it. A pilot only gets praised after an exceptionally good maneuver, which was probably a mix of great skill and a little bit of good luck. So what's likely to happen next time? A performance that's closer to their average, in other words, a little worse. And likewise, a pilot only gets yelled at after an exceptionally bad maneuver. Next time, they're probably going to do better, closer to their average. The instructor was inventing a cause and effect story for what was just a random fluctuation. And it's this kind of perverse fact of life. We are often statistically punished for being nice and rewarded for being nasty. Our System 1 is an absolute story-making machine. It is desperate to find causes for everything, even when things are totally random. We look back at the past and we construct these neat, tidy narratives that make everything seem like it was bound to happen. This is hindsight bias, that classic I knew it all along feeling. And this illusion that we understand the past makes us dangerously overconfident about our ability to predict the future. Okay, so we've met the two flawed characters running around in our heads. So what? What can we actually do about it? How are we supposed to make better decisions when our own brains seem wired to fool us? Here's the key. You can't just decide to eliminate your biases. That's not how it works. You're always going to see that optical illusion. The real goal is to build better habits around your thinking. It's about learning to recognize the tripwires. For example, when the stakes are really high, when you feel a super strong emotional reaction, when you're tired, or when you're facing a complex problem with lots of stats, those are all giant red flags. Those are the moments you need to slow down, take a breath, and deliberately wake up your lazy System 2 instead of just going with your gut. And here is an incredibly powerful, practical tool to help you do just that. It's called the premortem. The genius of this technique is that it completely flips the script on our natural biases. Normally, our storytelling System 1 is focused on how everything's going to be a huge success, which leads to overconfidence. A premortem hijacks that whole process. By forcing everyone to imagine failure from the start, it gives people permission to think critically. It makes it safe to raise doubts and forces your analytical System 2 to hunt for threats that your optimistic gut would have totally ignored. So, let's wrap this up. Your mind is run by two systems, a fast, flawed hero and a lazy but powerful boss. Your intuition is amazing, but it has these predictable blind spots. We make up stories to explain pure chance, and that makes us way too sure of ourselves. The real trick is to know when your gut is likely to lead you astray, and to use simple tools to force yourself to slow down and think. So the real challenge isn't about choosing one character over the other. It's about becoming a better manager of your own mind, knowing when to trust your brilliant, fast-thinking hero, and knowing when it's really time to wake up that lazy but essential analytical boss.